Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cheese Room podcast. This is Brendan, your host for the show. Joining me for a very, very special show, we have some esteemed guests with us today. First up, I'll start with you, Paul, in Brixton. How you doing, Mr. Muir?
You put the esteemed the guest last. Thank you very much. You brought supporting act on. I'm great, thanks, mate. I'm really, really excited and looking forward to this. So thanks for having me on.
We are in the presence of legends. And the first one we will introduce today is the legend Dino himself, South American football expert, my mate in Rio, Mr. Tim Vickery. Tim, how you doing?
Very well, and all the better for having this chance to virtually meet my boyhood idol. What a thrill! What an honour!
Amazing. As Tim says, we are delighted to be joined by club legend, and legend by the very definition of the words, Steve Perryman Mbe. Steve, welcome to the Cheese Room. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. Doing great. Yeah, pleasure to be talking to you all. And let's have a good hour or 2 hours, whatever you take.
Yeah, well, we are going live on YouTube, so we have 8 people watching so far. So thank you for joining and not watching the Goons doing Chelsea 3-2 at the moment. But we have this is certainly where you prefer to be. So this show is also going to be published on our audio platforms, so Spotify, Apple, etc. It is in support of our main charity, the Favela Food Fund, and also Steve's official charity, the Dorset Air Ambulance. I'm sure the Dublin Air Ambulance would appreciate it as well.
Devon Air Ambulance.
Devon.
Oh, Devon. Jeez. Hang on. Did I put it wrong in the ticker as well? Right.
No problem.
Disaster. I'll change the ticker midway through. So there's so much to get through. We aren't taking questions. We will take super chats only, and the proceeds from which will go to those 2 charities, Devon Air Ambulance and the Favela Food Fund. So Steve Perryman Mbe, born December 1951, fittingly the same year Spurs won the league. Steve's playing career at Spurs spanned 3 decades from 1967 to 1985, clocking up a club record 854 appearances. Steve has twice won each of the following trophies: the League Cup, UEFA Cup, and FA Cup, and was awarded Footballer of the Year by the Football Writers Association in 1982. So, Steve, you joined the club in 1967, the same year as Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band was released. You joined as an apprentice. Can you let us know what that experience was like, how you were discovered?
Yeah, sort of a long story, but I'll cut it short. So, brought up on a council estate in Northolt, part of Ealing district. Dad was a coal delivery man. Mum was a mum who had a job in the evenings at Lyons Maid factory. So we'd have our evening food, and then she would go off about 7 o'clock to 10:30. So it was a hard-working family. 3 of us, 3 boys. I'm the youngest. I followed them. I wanted to be with them, and they wanted to play football over the park or in the road. So I followed them. And I eventually followed them to a grammar school. And the problem with going to that grammar school was they didn't play competitive football. So having done good things for my district at the primary school, all of a sudden I was out of the system. I was gone. We were a well-known basketball school. So my basketball improved, but I'm not sure what it did or didn't do for my football. So for some reason, call it luck, we had a change of sports master. The new chap came in out of naivety. I think he put us all in for the district trials, under 15s, Ealing, and 6 of us got in, and I was one of them. And that season, I progressed from Ealing to Middlesex to London to England schoolboys. And because I'd been out of the scene for so long, nobody was chasing me. No one wanted me, of course. And all of a sudden now I hit the front. I'm playing in front of 100,000 at Wembley. And, we come home from playing in the Berlin Olympic Stadium against Germany, come back and play at Wembley against Scotland. And I'm the only player on the pitch who's not signed for a club. So, of course, any club interested could approach my parents, my brother, and so we had all sorts of great names around the house, this little council house in Northolt. And it's quite funny because they used to have to queue up. So the first one in, so it started about 7 o'clock at night. They would be shown into what was you called the best room. It was the room that you only went in on Sundays or your family were visiting. And then the next one went in the room where you sort of normally lived, where the television would be. Then if there was a third one, they would be in the kitchen where my mum was making tea for about 3 hours non-stop that night. And then if a fourth and fifth one come, they had to sit in their car until someone came out the front door, and then they all moved up a room, and then this next one came in. So, in a way, by not signing for a whole year, I put pressure on myself, which was sort of... Anyway, I ended up signing for the first club that knocked on my door, which was Tottenham Hotspur. The first game, having been picked for Ealing, we played Harrow. We won 9-1, apparently. I think we went a goal down. And Charlie Faulkner just covered the game. Chief Scout, lived in Hillingdon, not so far to go to Harrow, Salvatorian College it was called. And instead of going to the pro game that he was supposed to scout, he found out where we lived, knocked on the door, asked me to sign this form, which my brother said he's not signing that form. And apparently I needed to sign the form to go training, and my brother put him straight. Charlie, you don't have to sign that form. And I'm thinking, Ted, shut up. Nobody else wants me. Shut up. Anyway, so I used to go training at least once a week at Tottenham. And as I say, that year progressed through to England schoolboys. And the pressure just grew and grew and grew. And if I'd have known that I was going to sign for Tottenham, I could have done it there and then. Ted, shut up. I want to sign for these. And that year, Tottenham won the FA Cup. One training night, I'm walking through. My dad picked me up from school, took me there to training. I'm walking across the car park to get to the little gym. And round the corner comes Bill Nicholson. And it's like, well, it must be April because Tottenham are in the final of the FA Cup. So he said, Steve, how are you? Yeah, fine. Mr. Nicholson, fine. Are you going to sign for us or not? Well, he said, because if you don't, you're not getting a cup final ticket. Chelsea, that I wasn't training 1 or 2 nights a week, but they were interested in me. Tommy Docherty said, Steve, you come with your mum, dad, 2 brothers, so not just me, 5 of you, and then you get delivered and you'll come to the team hotel and you'll be in the meeting and you'll listen to the tactics and you'll go on the team bus and you'll be in the dressing room. And afterwards, we meet up with your parents and your brothers and we go to the banquet after we've won the cup. No mention of signing. No mention. So in a weird way, it was Bill Nick's straightforwardness that appealed to me. He was straight down the line, no spin, no mind games, no flannel. Just said it like you needed to hear it. And again, it just appealed to me. And the problem is when you play for England schoolboys, everyone thinks you're taking a backhander to sign. I didn't. Tottenham weren't paying it. Bill Nicholson weren't in for that. Of course not. And it was illegal. But then you join your group of apprentice players and they think you've had a backhander and they think you're a superstar and that you're going to blow them all out the water. So there's a sort of pressure there. And walked into the cafe in the first morning and there's a cutout of the Daily Sunday Express, Spurs sign, Star Schoolboy. There's nothing else on the walls, nothing. It took me 3 weeks to ask the lady to take that down. Please take it down, please. And what they didn't tell me, of course, I just left school. and the school went crazy when I left. They said I wasted a grammar school place. My mum apparently had signed something to say I was going to stay on to the sixth form, and I was leaving to join Tottenham Hotspur and pursue a dream. I don't know what else I would have done if I weren't a football player. I've got to be honest. They said I was university material. Well, I didn't quite see it. And so you join Tottenham, and there's this added pressure. And what Tottenham didn't tell me was that the apprentices started back a week before everyone else. But they told me the starting date was when the professionals started back. So I stroll in thinking it's everyone's first day. But the apprentices, my level, had been there a week. So they were not happy. And anyway, eventually the ball comes out and you prove you can play or you can't play, and you get on with it. And in a way, the bit of extra pressure was interesting, to say the least. It certainly wasn't bullying, but the era was more sort of like the army or the navy. It was that type. Bill Nick and Eddie Bailey were probably trained in those ways, to keep fit of stuff. Although we didn't really do a warm up before games or before training, it was straight in. I've never quite understood that, but so it was a quite a tough school. In the area of the training ground where we changed, I was 15. I would have probably been with 21-year-olds. We had 55 pros at the time. 21-year-olds who'd never played in the reserves. And now this whippersnapper's coming in at 15, and people are saying, oh, he'll be in the first team by 18. He'll be doing this, he'll be doing that. It's the next Johnny Haynes. No, please. Anyway, so it was a tough upbringing, and it got tougher. After 3 days, Bill Nicholson calls me in. He says, Steve, how you doing? Yeah, fine. Thank you. Fine. Well, the TV cameras are coming in the next couple of days. The first team, FA Cup winners, are playing the European Cup winners, Celtic. Apparently there's going to be 100,000 there up in Scotland. So the TV cameras are going to talk to the first team about this high-profile game, albeit pre-season, and the cameras are going to stay, and they want to talk to someone about the life of an apprentice professional. And I've said, you're going to do it. No. Why not? I've been here 3 days. I don't know the life of an apprentice professional, do I? Anyway, so he said, well, you're doing it. So I never slept for 2 nights. Eventually, I have to go back to him and say, Bill, I can't do it. I can't do it. He said, I said, you're going to do it. You're doing it. Anyway, so you get all this added pressure from all around you. Plus, I was traveling 2 hours a day there and 2 hours a day back. So you're 15 years old, just left school, 4 hours traveling, on top of this very, very physical. I don't ever think that you're not fit when you're a schoolboy, but you're certainly not fit to do a pre-season. And you are road running and you're doing all the stuff and weights and all that goes with it. So the number of times I missed my stop at Northolt and ended up at the end of the line, West Ruislip.
I've done that.
It's only about 3 or 4 stops, but it was the end of the line. And
I used to do the Heathrow loop on the Piccadilly line, but that was a few too many sherbets. It wasn't overtraining.
Ozzy tells me now and again that he ends up in Cambridge. I said, Ozzy, just cut out the middleman. Just buy a house in Cambridge. Just move there.
It's fascinating for me that you're talking about Bill Nick, because I remember I read your autobiography, appropriately enough, in Ealing Library in the late 80s.
Wow.
And I've never seen it since. And
Wow.
there's loads of that book that I can still remember. that shows you what a great book it is. And one thing that sticks out is you talking about those early years at Tottenham, set moves. If one goes forward, if one goes back, the next one has to go forward.
Yep.
And that's influenced the way I look at football ever since. Yeah. I can stomach 2 going back, but I can't stomach 3 going back. But anyway, all like set plays. And we all grew up in a certain extent in the shadow of the double.
Yes.
Blanchflower, White and Mackay. So. But there's a Tottenham side that for me, I think has been overlooked. And that's the push and run side of 50-51.
Very much so.
And if you read accounts, it's like talking about a Guardiola side these days.
Yes.
No, it's so far ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And obviously, Bill Nick and Eddie Bailey played in that side. So in the Tottenham that you joined, late 60s, can you still feel the legacy, not only of Blanchflower, White and Mackay, but also of push and run?
Yeah. You're dealing with Bill Nick every day. You're dealing with Eddie Bailey every day. Even if you're just walking past them in the corridor, there's this aura about them. You know, Bill Nicholson, all that he did as a manager, you know, of course, the push and run team. And I'm from West London, so it's not as if that was pushed down my throat. But the minute you walk in the door at Tottenham, you're aware of history, of tradition, of values, of rules, of playing rules. You mentioned moving set pieces. The man off the ball makes the play.
Yeah.
The man off the ball makes the play. So this ball comes up. I think our youth team were playing the first team in pre-season. Ball comes up to Gilly. He now thinks Jimmy Robertson should run beyond the fullback. So he plays this ball in. Not a bad pass, I have to say. And Jimmy Robertson was stood still. Bill Nick, stop, Gilly. Who makes the play? Man off the ball. What's his message to you? What's he doing? He stood still, Bill. It's not right. It shouldn't be stood still. I'll deal with that. I'll sort that out. What's his message to you? He wants it to feet, Bill. Give it to his feet then. And that's the Gilly. And that could have been to Jimmy Greaves, that could have been to Mike England, could have been to any of them. And you imagine you're on that pitch listening to that. You've got to be some sort of idiot not to take them messages in. And it may be never said directly at you, that sort of stuff. But it's floating over you every single day. Ball goes out of play. Ball goes dead, come alive.
Steve, when you're on a training pitch and you've got these people around you, how do you feel? Did you get overawed? Did you get nerves as a normal thing? I expect that, but did you look around and think sometimes, what am I doing here? Were there any points like that at all? I mean, how did you deal with that, with those characters around you and the quality of that player?
I thought, what am I doing here? After about 6 months of this travel, and my back's giving way. There wasn't weakness in my back, but you know, the weakest part just cracks. I think I missed about 4 or 5 months with a back problem. Jeez. And so that's the time I thought, what am I doing here? This is too hard. I can't take this. I don't think I knew the word anxiety. If I'd have known it, I think I'd have been anxious. I didn't know it. So that part about being with these great players, it was just every single day. You could finish our session, be walking across the back of the goal, and Jimmy would be planting one in that corner, and boom, side footing it into the net, just inside the post. And it was natural, it was normal in the end. And they weren't being superstars by any means. I mean, they could have a laugh and have a joke like no tomorrow. And so it just became the norm. And they were very good to us, the apprentices. Dave Mackay was a bit sort of Sergeant Major-ish. I'm here. He didn't have to say a word, but he stuck his chest out, I'm here. And we do. But they were great to us. And it was up to you whether you wanted to learn the lessons or not. And Bill Nick lived, breathed, ate, drank the game. That's something he got across to you. You better be serious. You're playing for Tottenham Hotspur. You better be serious about wanting to improve. And I had a chat with his daughter in the boardroom at Tottenham one day after his death, and we both agreed, his daughter and me, his young player, that Bill Nicholson was the type of man you did not want to let down. And he didn't do that by fear. He didn't do it by shouting. It was a pure how he carried himself and what he expected and how he lived his own life. And you know, they'd say things like, and of course, all his staff were all in the same, from the same era, and all. Johnny Wallace, the man who looked after us, the youth players or the apprentices, would say, when we had to do jobs, you will play how you work. You cheat the work, you'll cheat the game. And I mean, that's sort of obvious, because if you're a cheat, you cheat on all ways, all angles. And the message, whether you were working, whether you were training, whether you were just sat in a dressing room, there were things going on for you to take heed of. And that Bill Nicholson never fined a player that I was aware of. Never. And people didn't take liberties with Bill Nicholson. It just did not take liberties. He did not let him down. And I think that was his great. He made this framework of sort of rules within the game, and of course, the rule for Steve Perryman would not be the same rule for Jimmy Greaves. Of course not, but you were all part of that same structure, and you of course, in the end, you get shut down by two players. There's no rule for that. You've either got it in you to get through them, or turn away, or get out of the problem. But about 80% of the game was laid out for you. And Bill Nicholson, for instance, used to say, he would say a word to you that anyone else could say. I would say it to my players in Japan or wherever, about anticipation. And Bill Nick would say, Steve, anticipation, son. And it just led you there. The word led you. He'd say, Steve, you can will the ball to yourself. You can will it to yourself. And another great one he gave me, I'm sort of not a great tackler, but I'm going into challenges and whatever. And he'd say, Steve, if you tackle and pass the ball to one of our players, don't just tackle. Tackle in the direction of one of our players. Well, I mean, me and Pat talk about this all the time. If you can find something new that Bill Nicholson hasn't already told us, I'll suffer him. And how long ago was that?
Amazing.
Tim, what were your early memories of Steve? I remember you saying...
Yeah, the year that I first followed football was 71, 72. You know, I'm 6 years old, collecting the stickers. On the first sticker we put in was Pat Jennings in a book, you know, and my dad explaining who he was and so on. So I'm collecting the stickers, and Steve Perryman's the youngest. So he's my man. He's me on the field. You know, he's the one that I relate to. And the night in you know, my falling in love with football that most sticks in my mind is being in Hemel Hempstead, listening on the radio when we're at home to Milan in the semi final of, you know, the first UEFA Cup, and I was old enough to know that this was something different. This was something glamorous. And Steve Perryman scores both the goals. And I've got a number of questions based on that. One, you look at the pitch and it's just hideous. And it's April, for crying out loud. How much of that was a problem over the years for a side that want to pass the ball like Tottenham the state of the pitch, and could more have been done about that earlier?
I've seen film of that era of Derby County,
Yeah.
and at the baseball ground.
But that was below the sea level, that one. So there's an explanation there.
Yeah, sure. But how were they so precise with the ball?
Yeah.
On that? And we were brought up by a get on with it society. Bill Nick, Eddie Bailey, their staff, Cecil Poynton, etc. They'd come through the wartime. They'd come through the vouchers that you get to get food in wartime and after. What do they call that? The vouchers, the
rations,
ration books, and so they would get on with it society. And for instance, our council house, me and my two brothers would run downstairs, get in front of a 3-bar electric fire to get dressed, because that was the warmest place.
Yeah.
So as much as it wasn't right, why they kept putting sand on the pitch, I do not know, but they did. It was basically get on with it, because Bill Nick weren't going to have it as an excuse. Martin Chivers tells the story of he signs for Bill Nick, and I think his first game was against Arsenal, and he scores a goal and they win 2-1 or 2-0. And Jimmy Greaves sits next to him and puts his hand on his knee and said, "How was that, Big Chiv?" Ah, great. Wow, what a stadium, what a noise, what a fantastic. I don't like the pitch though. I don't think I'm playing the pitch. That pitch. Jimmy Greaves said, Bill, you'd like to know your new signing can't play on that pitch. I think you should know that. Chip said he could have just died. Oh dear. So yeah, I mean, it was and do you know that was the 4th game in 6 days over the Easter period. 4 games in 6 days. Therefore, we picked up injuries, and that led to the story about Alan Mullery being pulled back from Fulham on loan.
Yeah,
he comes in. He's up and at him, Alan. Yeah. And I've got something to follow. Maybe I didn't need someone to follow, but he was definitely at it. And he was going to prove Bill Nicholson wrong. He shouldn't have gone out on loan. He shouldn't have been. Yeah. So, and we know the story that Alan eventually scores the winning goal to win the cup. And, but 4 games in 6 days, would they do that today?
No. The other thing that strikes me from that game, again, this is a memory of reading your book in Ealing Library more than 30 years ago, that you fell out with your older brother, who saw you as a player who could express himself more, and who could have more nights like that glamorous night against Milan when you're the goal scorer.
So the thing
you've got to fit into a collective context of the team. So do you regret it? Did you do that too much? What do you think now, looking back?
I did. But in an effort to make myself selectable, you've got to bring to the party, you've got to bring to the table what they haven't already got. And what they lacked was legs. Lots of good players. Okay, getting a little bit near the end-ish. And I was brought in as, I describe it as there was too many chiefs and not enough Indians. And I was brought in as an Indian. And no one told me that was how it's going to be. I hadn't played that way in the youth team or the reserves. Only played 6 games for the reserves before I got in. But it's obvious that when I'm there and the team is struggling, they got beat 5-0 the week before at Derby. First time Dave Mackay ever played against Tottenham. That's why I got my chance. And I cannot stress, if I went and won the ball with my eagerness, with my energy, 17 years of age, the crowd treated me like I'd scored a goal. So their message is, Steve, we like that. We want some more of that. And I'm not going to turn that down. I'm going to push. And course, as fair as you could be. Now and again, you miss time one, of course. So my brother watched me for like 3 years. He was the one who made me into a leader, Ted. He was the one who told me, Steve, you'll be a better player if you realise that if you tell the man on the ball what you think he can do, it makes you a better player. Not because he's a bad player, not because you're a better player than him, but because none of us have got eyes in the back of our head. He told me that when I was about 10, 11 years of age. So he's not a coach and he's not a teacher. So if I'm 10, he's 14. What advice that is to a young player. What advice. Anyway, so he was a mentor for me, and I really believe you have to meet the right mentors at the right time, the influences. And of course, he was an influence at leading me to the park and the fields and the outside on the road. But he really, really believed in my ability to play. And I wasn't inside forward, I was a passer. But when I got in the first team, to make myself selectable, I needed to be this all-action midfield winner. So the game changed, 66. Didn't have wingers anymore. Ramsey didn't have wingers, and he won the World Cup. So it was wide midfielders. So you sort of had enough people in there, and you didn't have a winger stuck out there saying, "Oh, no one ever gives me the ball." And so I sort of got lured into that way of keeping my place in the team. And when my brother said, "I'm never watching you play again," why not? Because all you do is run about. You challenge. You're never going to have a bad game. You work too hard. He's never going to leave you out because you work too hard. But you're working too hard as per the rest of your game. And you don't supply the through pass anymore. You don't do this. You don't do that. You're becoming a workhorse, and I don't like to see it. So I said, and I can't believe I spoke to my brother like this. Ted, I've got to say, who am I going to keep happy? You or the the manager? You or me, who would you keep happy? And he said, I'd stay true to my game, which is very easy said, but hard to deliver. So he didn't watch me play till I was about 29, and I'd sort of been through that quagmire of games and came out the other side. I did the season in the second division, bringing the ball out from the back and setting up play and setting the midfielders free, exactly how I would have wanted to be set free. And then he started watching me again, which is great. And we're great friends now. And yeah. But
do you think he was right back then?
Sorry?
Do you think he was right back then?
Yeah.
So you regret it?
No, because it was the difference between. He actually wanted me to go to West Ham.
Hey, what?
Ooh.
Well,
hang on a minute, Mr. Perryman. Hold up. Yeah, what?
Well, because listen, we were from West London. We go to Brentford one week, QPR the next.
Yeah.
So when these big clubs are coming in, Bill Nicholson sat in the chair and Ron Greenwood's in the kitchen with my mum making the tea. And remember, this is 66 World Cup.
Yeah.
Hurst, Moore and Peters. My brother said to me, Steve, there's only one club out of all these people that want you that produce players. It's West Ham. And I think I said, Ted, it's 2 hours to Tottenham and 2 hours back. It's 2 hours 20 to West Ham. I'm not sure I could cope with it. He said, go in digs. I said, no, not going digs. No, that's not me. Anyway, so it was his way of underlining, if you'd have gone to West Ham, you wouldn't have turned into this type of player. And yet, who knows? You go to West Ham, you get the wrong kick on the wrong place at the wrong moment, your career's finished. Who knows? Maybe I'd have played 100 times for England. Who knows? But the fact that I was 19 years at such a good club, at such a football driven club. It can't have been a wrong decision.
But one thing that must have had a negative effect on your career is Tottenham just falling into a hole at the wrong time when you're in the mid-20s.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at almost all of the big clubs to this day, you know, United post-Ferguson and Arsenal post-Wenger, there's a huge problem replacing the charismatic manager.
Yes.
The exception is Liverpool, isn't it? The exception is Liverpool because when Shankly goes,
carries on.
Well, it gets better. You know, in comes Bob Paisley. Shankly's all charisma. Bob Paisley can hardly complete a sentence. You know, he's extremely astute, and Liverpool get better. So Liverpool's one end of the scale, and the other end of the scale is Tottenham, because the whole succession of Bill Nick, it just seems to have been an absolute disaster when the team was lost for a while, and this must have had a terrible effect on your career because it's just when you're coming into your peak.
Yeah, I don't know if I imagine this, but I think I remember reading that the Tottenham board said when Bill Nicholson left that they'll never have a manager who will have that amount of power again. And I'm thinking, no, find the right man. And give him all the power.
Yeah.
You don't know football. I mean, I didn't know a lot about directors and chairmen in those days, but they certainly didn't know football. And we went to Swaziland, and I got on the bus. We were there with Liverpool, and I got on the bus last, and the only place left on the bus was next to Bob Paisley. So another player shouldn't be sat next to their manager, but it was nowhere else. I either stood up, which would have been wrong and obvious. I was sat next to Bob. And the music, you can imagine, two teams of young footballers, the music, the loud. And I'm coming to the end as well. So I said, Bob, how do you cope with this music? He said, the reason I'm packing it in.
What was out of curiosity, what was the song? What was the music?
Just like the current, whatever it was, but it was loud, and everyone tries to prove to each other that they listen to good music, and this is it, and everyone seemed to be enjoying it, and I'm thinking, no, I was never a music man, to be honest, and that's why I asked him the question, how do you cope with this, Bob? No, the reason I'm packing it in. And the other story about Shankly is that he had I think his name was John McLaughlin in the team at the same time as me. Taller than me, a bit Alan Hansen-ish sort of shape. And they really believed in him. And so Bill Shankly decides that they're going to send him steak home and Guinness. Don't let your dad eat it. Don't let your brothers eat it. It's for you. Tell your mum it's for you and the Guinness, one a night or whatever. And anyway, after about 3 months, knock on Shankly's door, and the lad comes in and he says, Boss, I've let you down. What do you mean, son? I've got my girlfriend pregnant. No problem. No problem. We'll work it out. We'll work it out. Calls a staff meeting. Explains to the staff what's happened, and he said, it's my fault. It's my fault. We bred a fucking stallion. Excuse the word, but that's what he used. My other thing about Shankly is he takes off Kevin Keegan one game, much to the displeasure of the crowd. And they weren't used to criticising the manager, but they did, because they didn't like the fact that this all action, Kevin Keegan, was taken off. So at the end of the game, the press man quite rightly says, Bill, what about the reaction of the crowd as to your substitution? And he said, they were right. Kevin Keegan was so far better than the others. I felt sorry for him. So I thought he deserved to come off. So in a way, he did whatever he wanted to do, but still agreed with the crowd. I mean, that is clever.
It must have been frustrating for you to have been at that time when Tottenham were lost, that mid-70s.
Yeah.
You're ambitious. You've grown up with the best.
Yeah.
And then the club is lost for a while.
We go back to your similar point, your first point. So I was a playmaker, then I become a play stopper. And now all of a sudden, the good players go. And now I've been elevated again to be the playmaker. Ooh. Okay, great if I could do it, but I actually had lost a bit of that. So then you're not delivering what people want. So then your form goes. Now you actually are not covering as much ground either. So you're in between. You're not doing that and you're not doing that. So the club just didn't enter the race for signing the top players like Bill Nicholson had done. And Bill obviously was getting old and his judgment was sort of going a bit as well. We lost 3 players, Roger Morgan, Peter Collins and Jimmy Pearce. So at the time we went down, they would have been like 30-something. That's a third of your team lost. And not only have you got to replace them, you've got to replace the other ones who have now got old. And we just couldn't do it. And we quite rightly went down. And I'm not proud to say that, but I played 42 out of 42 games that year. So it must have had something to do with me. And I suspect it was something to do with my naivety as well. Keith was naive manager, first job. And Terry Neal sort of held the fort for a little while. People expect me to criticise Terry Neal. I didn't actually. I won't criticise him because he actually did my game a favour. And very simple. Most good things are very simple. He said, Steve, you're always going to recover back to goal. You're always going to do it. I know it. It's in you. It's your discipline. I want you just to run on beyond the front 4, 5, 6 times a half. Just see what happens. If it breaks down, I know you're going to get back as quick as you can. And I think I had my best year of making goals and scoring goals under Terry Neal. And it was simply because he got me out of that behind the ball, safety, behind the ball. And he opened this sort of game up for me. Having said that, I wasn't so disappointed when he left. I didn't think he was that good to the group. I don't think the group believed in him enough. And then Keith got his chance and, messed up the first year and then recovered it to get back to where he was. So I think I was part of that re-emergence. I re-emerged my game. And part of that was going to the back and bringing the ball out, as I just spoke about. And all of a sudden, with all these experiences behind me, of number of games, number of situations, the Bill Nicholson messages, the Eddie Bailey sort of, come on, etc. The game is never easy, never. But at a certain age, the game came like reading a book. I knew what was going to happen next. So I was moving there before the ball arrived there, if you see what I mean, particularly from a defensive point of view. Mm-hmm. And therefore I had my most enjoyable season in the second division. I absolutely loved playing the ball out from the back. Mm. And when I see people play the ball square and play the ball square, run at the middle of 2 players, get them both thinking, oh, here he comes. Oh, I've got to go. Because they're all lazy. Front men are lazy. And just commit them and then feed your midfield player. So I think that's something that's lacking in our team at the minute. Guy, I think, is getting a bit better at it, But, the other day, we all agreed there was no tempo, there was no energy, there was no this, there was no that. Well, where's that going to land on? There's no tempo. Who's it landed on? Who you saying it's not got tempo?
Front three.
Anyone?
Bringing out the back. Starting from the back.
I've got to tell you, I'd pin the goalkeeper because you're captain. You can get the ball and feed it quick. And if they're not making a position to feed it quick, get at them. I want to see you get at them. Hey, get out there. Dyer, you're the one in the middle of the three that the ball normally comes back to. Midfield comes back to you, whatever. You've got to lead the tempo. You've got to lead it. With your pass, don't pass it. Oh, it'll get there in the end. Boom. Pass it.
Now we're getting to the part which most fascinates me, especially talking about tempo, which is Aussie.
Yeah.
Because then Aussie comes in. And see, I think this is taken for granted way too much. Because Aussie coming in, it's more than 20 years ahead of its time.
It is. Yeah.
And it's remarkable, the fact that he goes to this club on the other side of the world that he's never heard of, and it's his place in the world. You know, it's where he belongs. Absolutely. More than anywhere else, more than Cordoba. It's it's there.
Yeah.
And a huge part of this story is Steve Perryman and the relationship that you two are able to forge. I mean, Aussie has referred to you as the greatest captain he ever played under. I'm not even sure, Steve, you realise what he's saying there. This man, he won the World Cup with Argentina for the first time.
Yeah.
Under Daniel Passarella.
Yeah.
Now, Passarella was an absolute force of nature.
Yeah.
And Ardiles says, and Ardiles says the greatest captain I ever played under was Steve Perryman. Now, that bond between the pair of you, there's something really, really special happening there, isn't it? Because I get the impression that the Aussie story worked because you made it work from the start. So please tell us something about how that happened.
I definitely helped it. I definitely did. If you're a homegrown player and you've come up through the ranks, and I'm going to name two people I don't really like talking about, John Terry and Tony Adams. Through the ranks, Steve Perryman, you understand the crowd. I understood what a crowd wanted when I was 7, 8 years of age going to Brentford and QPR. I heard it all around me. Wow. Lazy this, lazy that. Why isn't he running? Etc. etc. So I understood what the Tottenham crowd wanted, what they expected, how they thought. And it was my job to put that over to the team. And who needs it the most? The players that are coming in from up north, but across the sea. And I think my communication was honest, yet clever. And Aussie would be sat at a table with the players in a hotel somewhere, and I'd walk in and he'd say, Stevie. He'll understand. Cut toys. Stevie, cut toys. Tell him. Curtains. He knows what I'm saying. How you don't know this? So there was a bit of sort of fun. There was a bit of kidology going on, but understanding. And he knew that I was a competitor, and he knew all the good things about my game. He said to me probably 5 years ago, Steve, I'll tell you something about you, shall I? Even on a Friday, piss take, 5-a-side, you close the ball. When you could have been forgiven for not closing the ball. I said, that's because of my discipline and my education. Yes. So he knew the good parts of people's game. And I don't read books, but I read faces. And Ozzy said to me one day, I said, how did you cope with the piss taking, Ozzy? Terry Naylor, John Pratt, people like that. He said, Steve, before I can understand English, I read the eyes. I know what's going on. And I think he read my eyes of sort of care. He said to me one day, early days, he's got a letter. Local school to Cheshunt, where he lived. Stevie, I do this. School presentation, like the assembly or whatever. So I said, oh yeah, you should do that. You do it, I do it. No, I live an hour away. This is 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, I don't do it. okay, I'll do it. And so you've got all this toing and froing going on. It was a lot of humour, a lot of what's the word? You sort of bouncing off each other. If I ever saw his wife, he'd say, Stevie, he's no good. No good. Is that right? She'd say, I've seen the games, Ozzy. I think he's good. Yes, but no. I the winner's medal. No medal. No. They don't even play for England.
In football terms, was it a two-way street? Were Ozzy and Ricky, were they picking up things and were they passing on things? Did English football change them as players? Did they change you as players?
I said to Ricky one day, you have ruined 5 centre forwards at this club. Of course, this is a bit of a Mickey tape. Why? Me? Why? I said, we have centre forwards that want you to cross the ball. You're never going to cross the ball. Really? Ricky and Ozzy would pass the ball to Jerry Armstrong's feet to get it back.
Yeah. There's a wall.
Jerry was over the top. Wash, goal, like the Spain World Cup for Northern Ireland.
They like playing with Chris Jones, didn't they? Because he could do that.
Yeah, Chris was good player. Chris, I really like Chris, and but of course they had the Glenn bit. They had the Glenn. They had respect. Keith never told him that we just got promoted. I said, what would that have meant then if Keith had told you? He said, wouldn't have signed. No chance. No fucking chance. No. Just up from Division 2. No. I don't know. I got somewhere else. So a lot of humour, a lot of messages within the humour, because sometimes that's the best way to get it over. Mm-hmm. And but you're talking about tempo of brain, tempo of decision, tempo of action. He was just a live wire, and he brought something special to us. And everyone thought he was going to get kicked out of games, and the Tommy Smith bit at Swansea. Ozzy was so mentally strong that was never going to happen, never. And Ricky actually was, and he would own up. He'd say, I'm either 3 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. I should be more, but Ozzy was game after game after game after game. You knew what you were getting with Ozzy, and
well, it was just a marriage made in heaven, wasn't it? And Ozzy and Hoddle, because Hoddle couldn't see the short pass, but was fantastic with the long, and Ozzy was all tempo and give and go. So the two of them together, and I remember when Hoddle left, our dealers didn't work anymore in the midfield because the balance just wasn't there anymore, But the two of them together, it was art.
I played in midfield with Glenn quite a lot when he first got in the team, and what would come out the air to Glenn, and I'd be there, and he would just ignore me and go somewhere else. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work. And after about 3 or 4 times, I said, Glenn, listen, I'm there. I'm 5 yards away from you. Give me the ball. I'll give it you back. Steve, I never saw you. I don't see you. His vision is so far which is what made him such a brilliant player. Great technique to carry out what he saw. And there are a lot of players that did see the long things but couldn't deliver it, so they're better off not seeing it. And but Glenn could deliver it, and the match out of those two in midfield, wow! And how unlucky was Mickey Hazard to be around?
Yeah.
When those two were there, and actually Mickey's biggest problem was he didn't believe he could ever take over from those two. If they were injured, fine. This is me, like the UEFA Cup '84. This is me. But could you imagine him going into Keith's office saying, "I think you should leave Odo out because I'm better than him"? No, that's not going to happen. And the same with Ozzy. But all good players like those, the people that can. I believe I was the leader of the team, but Ozzy and Glenn were the leader of how we played. Do you know what I mean? I got them there all on time. I hopefully got them up for the battle or got some into them at half time, including myself. And but they led how we played. They dictated the passes, the movement.
You wrote in the book that I read in Ealing Library more than 30 years ago and have never forgotten that everything under Keith, it was all off the cuff. Was that a criticism? Do you think that with more of a structure, the team could have achieved more?
I think Keith was very brave that he didn't want to inhibit players. I said to Keith after we won the cup in '82, I was in his office for something, and I said, Keith, next season, yeah, we got to now be thinking about the league. He said, yeah. I said, what are you saying, Steve? I said, why don't we play, excuse the word, why don't we play a bit more like the Arsenal? He said, you could never say that if you were sat behind this desk. So, but they're the conversations that you need to have. You need to have them. Otherwise, players could be thinking, well, why aren't we a bit more solid? Why don't we? When we lost, we'd lose by 3. When we won, we'd play someone off the field. We won 3-0 at Forest one day. And first half was actually very average. Not great things. Second half, we smashed them to bits. A good Forest team. And Brian Clough, I followed Brian Clough down the tunnel. And instead of turning right to his dressing room, he turned left to ours. Where's he going? Anyway, I go in and sit down. Brian Clough stood where our manager stands in the away dressing room at Forest and said, well done. Well done. If you lot had done one more back hill, I was going to fuck off home. keep it up. I mean, what style is that? What class is that?
Steve, did you when you were playing that Berkshire type? What were the team just happy to follow what the boss, or were they saying like maybe we should have a little bit more structure? Maybe we played a little bit more kind of, shall we say it, to a type, we might be a bit better. Was there like grumblings? Obviously, you are the middleman, the captain, the leader, as you say, right, between obviously Berkshire, the general, and the team. Were you getting like? Was there any kind of not a mutiny or anything like that? But were you getting like rumblings?
Depending on results. If you go like 4 games without a win, things would be coming forward.
Yeah.
Again, little rumblings, but actually, in a way, you would be attacking Glenn's game, maybe Ozzy's game, maybe, whenever you put a team together, have you got enough height? Have you got enough pace? Have you got enough that? Yeah. Have you got enough leaders? Have you got enough energy? Have you got enough legs? And it's the way that you put all that together. And that's the beauty of our game. Managers see that in different ways. And Keith saw the game his way, and any manager is entitled to do it his way. They really are. Of course, within conversation, like me saying, why don't we play a bit more like the Arsenal? You make your point and then you get on with it. And he's the man who lives and dies actually on it. I know it's your career as well, but yeah, I don't like interference with managers.
It was a gloriously Tottenham way to do things, wasn't it?
It was, and you know, when I first started working at Tottenham and sitting on the sideline there on the track, because they wouldn't give you a ticket up in the stand because there weren't any spare. You know, it's 4-2-4, and we got outrun in midfield. Mullery and Venables would be chasing people all over the park, and Terry's legs weren't that great. Muller's was, yeah, he was up for it, but you know, eventually you get forced into doing. Keith, for instance, banned Ozzy and Ricky from taking throw-ins. Why? Because when they threw it around your neck. Because that's what they could have coped with. And we couldn't. And he just banned them. Ozzy, definitely, no throwing. Don't take a throw-in. No, Ricky, no. Get away from throw-ins. And so there was those type of things. But I said to Keith Birkinshaw one day, our sessions would have always finished with a 9v9 across half a pitch, big goals. And I said to him one day, Keith, if you listen to yourself, the instructions that you give, you cannot wait to applaud a bit of good skill or a bit of creativity or getting out of trouble. You can't wait to say, well done, whatever. You never, ever, ever applaud good defense. You never. You just let it go. Well, that's what players do. They block shots. They show them the line and angle them off away from goal. Yes, normal. No, Keith, unless you tell them, unless you highlight the good stuff, they're only going to go for the extra bit, aren't they? And Paul Miller and Roberts, for instance, they need to be told how good they are at blocking people off and doing the good things and the defensive things. Keith, Tottenham Hotspur, but if we don't start defending properly and you leading it, who knows? So, yeah.
It was Keith's last year when we won the UEFA Cup, which you were famously suspended for the second leg. But I'm sure you were there on that night. What was that night like, Steve?
Great night, of course. Very special, those UEFA Cup nights, European nights, all white kit. Again, you are giving yourself credibility when you finish the season off with a trophy, be it the League Cup in, you know, when I first started, or be it the FA Cup that put us back on the stage, the real stage, and then the UEFA Cup to sort of match up with the one that we got in the early 70s. Great night. I was suspended, and that referee who gave me the second yellow card in Belgium was later proved to taken money for the Anderlecht win over Forest in the semi-final. So I suggest what I did, in having already been on a yellow card, I suggest he took the money. No one can ever prove that to me, but it was a nothing challenge, nothing. And their players did like a lap of honour when I got a yellow card. So I can't play in the second leg. I'm thinking I'm not that good. I'm not that good that you're celebrating so much. And actually, about 6 of them come up to me after the second leg victory and apologised. Now, I don't know what they were apologising for. I should have said, what are you doing? Anyway, so The greatest moment for me.
On the other extreme, I do remember the red card. Was it away to Real Madrid? And listening to the radio at the time, the radio was saying, "Well, I can't believe Steve Perryman's been sent off." And then he watched it on the highlights, and he thought, "Well, yeah, I probably can believe it."
I should have got 2 red cards. I should have got 2. And when I give a talk, I normally say, "So actually, I've never played another game in Europe, but if I did, I'm suspended for 6 games, not 3, which is not right." But anyway, so. But the greatest thing about that night was not only how the young players coped with it, the 84 game, the penalties, the Danny Thomas missing one and getting cheered back to the halfway line. That says something about a crowd, what a crowd can give you. I missed out before. When I went into challenges in my early days, they gave me power. That crowd gave me power. And Ian Rush told me once, that the Liverpool crowd gave him as much applause for closing down a fullback than actually scoring a goal. Wow. Again, what are they saying? We want more of that. We like that. So anyway, our young players cope with it, cope with the pressure. Robbo coped with the captaincy. We had injuries all over the place. We had experience missing. And maybe the ref did take a bung. Well, he definitely did take a bung for the Anderlecht Forest game, and therefore maybe there was someone up there saying they don't deserve to win this. But at the end of the game, I haven't got a medal because I'm not on the pitch. Rightly so, I'm suspended. And Ozzy said, "Stevie, your medal?" No. We'll sort it out. No problem. He gave me his medal.
Wow.
Now, I know he's got a World Cup medal. But I'm respectful for that. And I went to Tottenham about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I went to the room where Ozzy was. I think it was called the 125 Club. And when I walked in, Ozzy had a drink in his hand, as ever. The skipper is in the building.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Wow. This is a World Cup winner. He said to me one day, "Stevie," I asked him about Maradona. And he said, "Steve, at his height, he never travelled on the team bus with us. He travelled with his mates in the car, either behind or in front of us." Really? He said, "You wouldn't have liked that with not a chance, Ozzy." He said, "But this man can win you the World Cup." It's just a different way of looking, isn't it?
Isn't it? It's a completely different kind of like.
I'm team orientated, and Ozzy is more calculated with his decisions of how to do things. And when you match all that up together, great. And the 3 years we had together in Japan was, we both agreed, was the best, very best 3 years of our life. When we won the championship, it was, we had the least budget, we had the weakest team, not team, it weren't weak, but in terms of the surrounding of the club. We had no players in the national team, national squad even, and it was a better result than Leicester winning our league, the Premiership. It was, we come from deeper to do it, and that was because we went from no respect, sugar, absolutely no respect, to Japan. We went from there to there, not only in distance, but in respect. And respect is a great word for me. And if you don't get respect, you may as well not be there. So when I left Tottenham Hotspur, having been shown the door by Sugar, who's the only man ever to sack Steve Perryman, I was absolutely delighted to get out of the place. Delighted. I saw the great football brain disrespected, and I'm talking about Aussie, and the environment was wrong, and they just didn't know how to run a football club or what was required to have a successful or a proper football club. All the things I knew about Tottenham Hotspur and doing things properly went out the door. Absolutely went out the door. So when I left that club that day, it was like putting me out of my misery. And you can imagine the surge of energy we get when we go to Japan. And Aussie's being treated like a World Cup winner. And Steve Perryman's been treated like a player that's played 800 and odd games and knows what he's doing and knows how to lead people and show people how to do things. And we just loved the Japanese players. We just loved their mentality. If they had any problem, after about 5 weeks, Aussie said, Steve, tell me about the players. I said, they're fit, they've got energy, they want to improve. He said, I agree with all of that, but something is lacking. Something is lacking. And we worked it out, it was their reactions. Japanese players could watch football from all over the world, Italy, Spain, Brazil, Portugal, England, wherever. And although they are more than impressed with Brazil, they actually got the wrong. Aussie came into training one day and he came in with 20 videos and he said to the team captain, get up, pick out one of these games. It was all Brazilian national team games. And he picked one out. He said, right, boom, put it in. He said, I want you to say how many touches the Brazilian player has. Shout it out. Kick off. 2. 1. 1, 2, 2, 1. Stop. Have they had more than 2 touches yet? No. You think Brazil is about back heels and flicks and overhead kicks. When the crunch comes, yes, it's about that. But they don't get there by doing overhead flicks and kicks and etc. They play what they see, and that is a talent in itself. So he angled their vision away from what they thought was great about Brazil into what actually is great about Brazil. But they were more influenced at the time by Italians, and the Italians was my feet. And it was more about acting than playing. And you imagine these Japanese players with all this energy now acting. No. So we had to convince them that a bad play is a mistake. A bad play and a bad reaction is 3 mistakes, not 2. 3 mistakes. So we just handled them a certain way and we ended up being successful. And I think the biggest thing about all that was we had 6 months with Wenger in charge of the multi-talented, multi-wealthy, Toyota-led Nagoya Grand Passate. And after 6 months, he decided to go to Arsenal and won the double. Steve Perryman, that got showed the door by Alan Sugar, won more than Wenger did with Aussie and without Aussie. Aussie won more than Wenger with Steve Perryman and without Steve Perryman. And yet he came back and won the double. And Mr. Sugar paid us to leave.
There you are.
Mm.
It sounds, Steve, as if you've got as much pleasure from your work coaching as you have from playing.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And actually, I suppose in a way, the playing part of it, when you read out how many games I played, if you'd have said to me I was going to play that number of games, or that's what you got to aim for, playing those games, I don't think I could have even attempted it. I would never have done it. It's the games come thick and fast, and you can't think too much about it. You just get through it. You just do it. And the 4 games in 6 days. Did I think I'm going to be tired? No. Would I have got any sympathy from Bill Nick if I'd have said I'm tired? Oh, tired? Tired? You want to go in them trenches? That's tired, which it is, of course. So coaching. I spoke to Martin Peters one day, and I was asking him why it didn't work out for him at Sheffield United. Top player, top man, great brain. And he said, and he took over at 3rd Division Sheffield United. He said, Steve, I set up this. Do you remember when Sheffield United had 3 sides to the ground? Because it was a cricket pitch, wasn't it? He said, I set up this practice on the pitch and a bit of interplay in the centre circle, then a big ball out to the right winger who was waiting there, who does this and does that, and he ends up crossing in to 2 strikers that have a bit of movement, and whoever played the ball out backs it up, edge of the box, in case it comes out. He said 20 minutes they did it, and not one proper cross that was met by the strikers. And the only thing I could say was, do it better. Do it better. Not how to do it better, because it was so natural to Martin Peters to where that ball's got to be positioned to get the swing of the foot and the cross in, which wouldn't go to the keeper, it would come away from the keeper. And he said, that's the moment I knew I weren't a coach. So maybe you can relate that to Bobby Moore, Bobby Charlton, all great names, great people and players. Could they put it across? And I think my game was a help to my coaching was the fact that I was sort of manufactured. I had to really think about the things I was doing. And I had this great grounding from Bill Nicholson and Eddie Bailey. And of course, you pick up on all of that. And I was asked on a Zoom this morning about who was my idol growing up. And I said it was Bobby Charlton. Bobby Charlton conducted himself great. He played for England like a warrior. He could score goals. He could long passes. He could do the lot. And I had the honour of meeting him in Japan. And I met more people in Japan because, being English, British Embassy, if anyone was coming over from Britain, I would be invited. Great. I'm an hour on the fast train to Tokyo. Great. And this day, Bobby Charlton's coming with his wife. I think he was back in the World Cup bid of 2002. So this was, it was 99. And as luck would have it, he came on the Friday. On the Tuesday, my team had won the championship. If he spoke for half an hour, 10 minutes was about Steve Perryman and playing against me and being so pleased that I come to Japan and I've won, not many Englishmen abroad win a league title. And not only has he won the league title, they scored the most goals, they conceded the least goals, and they got the best discipline record in the whole league. Yeah. So a couple of years later, I'm now back in England. I'm helping Exeter City. We're going to skin. And we get this famous 3rd round draw, Man United, Exeter, 5th division, 69,000 people allowed. And I'd see Bobby Charlton and his wife in the boardroom. Steve, where's your daughters? Actually, I think they're in the room outside. Get them in. No, this is a boardroom. No children. No. Steve, get them in. I want to hear them speak Japanese. I mean, the girls didn't know him, but I made sure they do know him now with regard to his history and stuff. So that's the great thing about football. You travel the world, you meet some of the nicest proper people. And it sometimes sort of makes me a little bit sad about how the game's going in terms of game management. I don't like that term, game management. People think that, pundits think it's the be-all and end-all of the game management. And I heard Potter one day criticised that he's got to learn a bit about game management. And I thought, have you looked at his record? How many games he's managed? How much success he's had, albeit in Sweden. But I don't care if you're in the pub league. If you win the pub league, you're the best team in that league. Potter got all these promotions. He's probably thought about game management. He's that clever and decided it's not right for his team. Because if you want to start a team off in third gear out of 4 gears, and then you go 1-0 up, then you go, whoa, second gear. Oh, it's very hard to get them back to third. And now you go a goal down. Now you want them in 4th gear. Incredibly difficult to do that.
You also managed our opponents on the weekend, Brentford. That would have been early 90s, because you mentioned about being from Northolt. I went to primary school in Northolt at St. Raphael's, and
wow.
I did a Brentford soccer school, which you probably organised because being the Northolt connection. And when you're a kid and you exaggerate to the point of lying. So I said as a kid that I had trials at Brentford, and I stuck with that lie for 20 years.
Rod Stewart did the same thing. He owned up in his autobiography, I didn't really have trials for Brentford. It wasn't really true. So you and Rod Stewart have got something in common.
But it turns into a reality. If you say it enough, it turns into reality. You actually believe it yourself.
Exactly. I justified it by thinking if I was any good, then the guys from Brentford would have seen it and let's give him a look. But
my mum was from Ealing, my dad was from Hounslow, so Brentford Football Club is right in the middle of those two, where the two families were. That's why we went to Brentford 1 week and QPR the next, and so Brentford was my chance. I started off as Frank McClintock's assistant manager, which was a great honour. Frank was a very, very good football man. He's a good football man. He was struggling in the job to get results, and he warned me. He eventually got the sack, and he warned me about the chairman. He's small-minded. He's petty. He's a skinflint, etc. Steve, don't take the job. Do not take the job. Anyway, so we think you can change people. You think you can change players. Well, you can to a certain degree. You think you can change chairman? Not sure about that one. Anyway, so I take the job, but I decide not to take a contract. Don't want a contract. No. Why not? I said, well, when you want to get rid of me, you just show me the door. When I want to get rid of you, I just walk out the door. What do we need a contract for? Oh, okay. Anyway, I soon learned that they had 5 training balls the first day I went there. 5 training balls. The chairman said to me, why, after about a week of me being in charge, why do we never produce a player at Brentford? I said, do you know how many training balls you had? 5. How are you going to make players with 5 training balls? Oh, that's the manager's fault. That was Frank's fault. Well, we'll see about that. When I ask you, I need something to improve this group of players, we'll see how quick your answer is. Now I'm listening to Frank's. So, anyway, I just worked that hard. I overcome all this sort of pettiness and negativity and all that. And I started to make us into a team. And so much so, we got to the quarterfinal of the FA Cup, lost 4-0 at Liverpool, but did great to get there. Won away at Blackburn, beat Man City at home. I know that happens in cups, but we actually deserved it. And one day, the press officer, who was an insurance man, nice guy, Eric White, didn't work full time at the club. Actually, was a volunteer. So he used to come in on a Wednesday and talk to me about the next Saturday program. And you'd say the normal stuff about welcome to this and welcome to that and all that. But I decided to go a bit of a different way. And I started to talking about training and improving and practicing and all that. Just so you give the crowd a bit more knowledge, if you possibly can. So anyway, he phoned me this Thursday. He said, Chairman doesn't like your notes. Chairman reads my notes. Yeah, he checks them. I didn't know that. What don't he like? He don't like the line where you said, if I'd have practiced my left foot more, I'd have been a better player. My left foot more, I'd have been a better player. What's wrong with that? He thinks it's flash. Eric, you tell him to stick his program up his arse. No, I'll do it. Anyway, so phone him. So what's wrong with that? It's not you, Steve. It makes you sound flash. I would have been a better player if I'd have practiced my left foot more. I just don't see it. Anyway, you do the manager's notes in future, and I'll check yours. Anyway, he was the type of chairman. He was the type of chairman that had great ideas. He came up with the idea for the playoff system. But when his head hit the pillar, the worm started in his head, and he thought, they're having me over, they're cheating me, they're stealing from me, they're kidding me on, and all this. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, the phone would go, and he'd give you the biggest volley of abuse. Oh, is that right? Oh, okay, yeah. So anyway, I worked my socks off there, and we were making a team. I took Blissett from Crewe. I took Holdsworth from Watford. We were becoming a team, and I needed a left back. We'd signed a player on a free from the Arsenal, Roger Stanislaus. 2 years later, we got 90 grand for him at Tribunal. And on the way back from the Tribunal up at Old Trafford, the chairman said, who are you going to get to replace Roger? So I said, Gary Elkins. And from that moment on, I knew that he didn't want to sign him. Gary Elkins of Fulham, by the way. So we were both third division. So after about 2 weeks, I said, listen, you obviously don't want this player. Why don't you want him? He said, Terry Bullivant, which is a name I knew, but didn't know him, doesn't like his eyes. So they're either too dear, they want too much money, or they want digs that you won't pay, or this, that, the other. They want new boots that you are never going to pay for. And now someone is being judged by their eyes. What do you mean? He said, he stares. You've lost me now. Gary Elkins plays left back for Fulham. Who's the best right winger in the third division? He said, well, you know it is. It's Andy Sinton. Now Andy Sinton. Yes, that's the player that you told me within 2 weeks of taking the job, get rid of that fat-ass little waster. Now he's the best right winger in the third division. Right. Well, Gary Elkins must stare him out because he never gets a kick in. Gary Elkins got pinched by Wimbledon, top league. He was not a top league player. He played 26 games for Wimbledon in the top league the next season. And I resigned on the back of it because I weren't on a contract, and I thought I'm wasting my time here. So that's my Brentford story. I didn't want to upset the Brentford supporters and let them think that their chairman is a donut, a tight-fisted, opinionated, whatever. So I just left and made no comment. It got said in the papers that I'd said that I couldn't motivate the players anymore, which is the worst thing you can say about a manager. Anyway, I took them to court and won because I said nothing to nobody. The PA put that out, so they had to pay me. But yeah, and that led to my disenchantment with chairmen and people that run football clubs. They want to employ you and then tell you what to do. They want to tell you to pick. And no, it's not right. Like I said about Bill Nicholson, employ the powerful man and then give him the power.
How's your relationship with the current incumbent at Spurs, Mr. Levy? Do you have much contact with him? I'm sure you go back.
No relationship really. They phone me when they want something, when they want me to make a quote about the 2 goals against AC Milan, or they want me to do an interview on the new Tottenham TV that's coming. I find it a little bit all one way. I said to one of the staff there one day, when you want me, I'm a very important person. When you don't want me, I'm a nobody. I'm not that important and I'm not a nobody. Just treat me with a bit of respect. As an ex-player, I played a number of games, had a good time here, tried my best, put my work in, didn't cost you anything. Give me a bit of respect. And that's basically where I sit with Tottenham. I don't want to be an ambassador. I don't want to be on the firm. I don't want them to have my opinion. No one's going to pay for that, my opinion. And yeah, I want them to do well. I look for their result. I love the fact when I go there and meet the old players. Love it. I love the chaps. And we've got a very, very close unit. I mean, I suppose you're closer to the unit that you win things with. There's reasons to get together. We don't have too many get-togethers as a team that got relegated, if you know what I mean. So, but it's a great club, great traditions. I just hope that they mustn't be embarrassed by the double team or the push and run team or the 70s team or the 80s team. Don't let that embarrass you. Be that something to look up to and try and emulate. That's basically what, and they nearly did it in one hit. You know, they lost the Champions League final. They were an inch away from winning that, which could have sort of blown the rest of us out of the water. Wow, what a, you know, after them great nights in Ajax and wherever. So yeah, we need them. You know, Poch made statements about, you know, trophies are just ego for the ego. Well, actually, no, they're not. If you win a trophy, when you win a trophy, you're halfway to winning your next one by what that gives you. And so we need them to win a trophy before too long. And I suppose finishing 4th is a trophy, isn't it? That's what we want from. The problem I have today with these current players is they want to play for manager A because they like him. They didn't want to play for manager B, C, or D. Now, if you believe that you deserve to play for a manager that you like or likes you, you're going to have to wait a long time for that. And people are paying your wages while that's not happening. So you should perform. You should do your best. It's a very simple game, this. Just show the crowd you're doing your best. That's all they want. That's all they really want out of you, is show them that you're trying. I think this was the problem in the end with, say, Dele Alli. When he was flicks and all that stuff was coming off, he looked great. When he started to try to nutmeg, and he's not got the confidence, but he's going to try it, and then it looked like he weren't going to chase back. Tottenham crowd not going to stand for that. They might love you, Dele, when you're doing it, but when you're showing, it almost looked like he didn't have a conscience. He almost didn't have a conscience about letting the ball go. And I think the players that are waiting for, you know, you have to ask yourself, if they didn't like B, C, and D, how long will it be before they don't like A?
That's what Neville talks about. Neville talks about all the time, doesn't he? About the United squad at the moment. They didn't like certain players. They're such a powerful group of players that they'll only play for like who they want to play. But if they don't like him, then he'll be out the door before you know it. It seems there's a lot of player power now, Steve, doesn't it? It seems it's all.
Yes, but the Tottenham crowd are not going to stand for it. They're not going to stand for it. And they would be selling themselves short. If they down tools, they're selling themselves short, the club short, and the supporters short. Can't work. It cannot work.
Yeah. Tim, you've been very quiet there for a while. Anything to have been going for over 90 minutes now. So apparently I've got to take my kid to the hospital. My wife's been texting me now.
A wise man speaks when he has something to say. A fool speaks because he has to say something. There are times in life when you shut up, and one of them is when Steve Perryman is telling you about values in football.
Ozzy, by the way, is improving. He's on the recovery trail. He's seen his advisors, medical advisors, just recently, and they told him everything great. Step it up. So I think he's only walking, for instance, but he's happy. He's cheerful, actually. And let's get him back as soon as we can.
It's such a fantastic story, especially given what happened between our two countries.
Yeah,
at the time, the bond that you forged with Ozzy, it just speaks so loudly about what football can do to bring people together. And for me, it's the high point of your career. Not even a game against Milan. It's the way that you made that team blossom with Ozzy Ardiles. You made Ozzy one of us. And his kid, this is many years ago now, about 10 years ago, his kid phoned me up. One of his kids. He was in TV production. And he's one of us.
Yeah.
He's just his kid is like one of us, and that you helped that happen.
Yeah.
And that for me is the outstanding achievement of a magnificent career.
Freddie is quite a serious referee. Yeah. And every time I saw Freddie, we had the crack. And I'd say, Freddie, you could have been a player. He must have size 12 feet. So if you cut them feet in half, you've got even more chance of being a player. And but what a nice family, what good ethics and proper people. He cares about Tottenham Hotspur. The way he was downgraded as a football person by Tottenham of that era after Venables. I mean, the atmosphere was toxic, and I think Ozzy called a press conference, didn't he, when he got the sack? And he called it the impossible job. And I make him right on that. Yeah. As much to do with Sugar's early years, it's questionable whether Sugar got it right after 10 years. So he certainly weren't going to get it right in the first year, was he? But, and that's not me saying he didn't spend money or he didn't allow this or allow that or the other. But he just didn't, the atmosphere of the place was not right. And to downgrade an Ozzy Ardiles football brain is criminal, absolutely criminal. And he had a spark, Ozzy. He had a verve about his thinking about the game and giving players confidence. And he would say to me, Stevie, I was a very good player. Stevie, without confidence, I was very average, very average. It's about giving players the confidence to go and play and carry out the job that you're asking them to do, but not tying them down too much, but a certain amount of freedom, but within limits. And you speak to any Swindon supporters or West Bromwich Albion supporters, Ozzy's a god to them, a god. And he went out of Tottenham with his sort of head down. And what a shame! What a shame! That could have been, that partnership there could have been a marriage made in hell, not in hell, in heaven as such. And but it turned out to be in hell. So, but you helped it make it heaven on the field. Yeah.
And that's what all of us remember most.
And
That's where all of our warmest memories come from.
Yeah, and in Japan, we fitted, and I remember Ozzy had a favourite player, centre back, who ended up playing for the national team, Morioka, and I always had this thing about he was a bit fluffy, and we lost this game 1-0, and we come in, and Ozzy always had this thing about don't shout, don't scream at the end of games. What the manager's really saying by doing that is not my fault. Anyway, silence. So we lost 1-0 to this from a corner, free header from a corner. So I said, not loud, said, so who was picking the number 9 up? Leave him alone. Leave him alone. But again, it needed saying. He's right for the way that he dealt with it after a game. But the others needed to know that we know he lost him. And I'd have had more respect for that player, who ended up with being a really good player, Morioka, of saying, down to me that. Then you don't have that sort of confrontation, do you? So, but Ozzy was an absolute delight to play with. Can I tell you my favourite story? Just the last one.
Please.
I spoke to Ricky about what was your upbringing like in Argentina? Lived on a farm, had a ball, used to run in and out the trees, and that's all I used to do, running in and out the trees. And then eventually I go to a bigger school, and I had to ride a horse to that school. And I'm thinking, where'd you leave the horse? When you're in school, would you tie it up, or does he get fed? Anyway, Lee saw these questions. He said, no, I didn't play my first 11v11 game until I was 13. And then I'm playing, and the schoolmaster's shouting, screaming, Ricky, pass! Ricky, pass! Because I'm running with a ball. So when you think about the 81 goal, he was just doing what he was practicing at home on the ranch. Perfect.
I practiced that run so many bloody times.
Yeah. How many goals have we scored in FA Cup finals?
Exactly, Phil. Exactly.
Love it. Love it. Chaps, really good to talk to you. You've got to get to hospital.
Apparently so. I'm going to give her a call. Steve, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us again. We will be making a donation to the Devon Air Ambulance because we do get advertising revenue through these. Whenever. Thank you so much. Tim, thank you for joining me again.
What an honour. What a pleasure. And what a lesson as well. Never stray too far from the basic values. That, for me, that's the lesson that I take away from this conversation. And it was Bill Nick and Eddie Bailey who set Steve up for he knew how to take advantage of everything that Bill Nick and Eddie Bailey stuck down his throat day in, day out. Life is simple. The game is simple. But we all spend a lot of time making it more difficult. Bill Nick would say, Steve, it's 11v11. Whichever way you want to look at it, it's 11v11. You can have whatever tactics you want. It's 11v11. Of course, there's tactics involved, but you know how they told me that I was going to go on the pre-season tour to America? I played this A-team game at Cheshunt on the best pitch. Walk off at the end. We normally won by 4 or 5 goals in that Metropolitan League. Walk off at the end of the season. Last game of the season. Eddie Bailey stood in the corner. Perryman, here. Someone tells me there's a list up in that dressing room you're just going to go into with a list of possible players that are going to America and Canada. And apparently you're on that list. Did you write your name on the list? No. Well, I suggest you take notice of what the instructions are on that list about your passport and all that. Now, listen, this current day would have been, Steve, you've had a good season. Manager wants to have a look at you abroad in a pre-season tournament, end of season tournament, etc. They just couldn't get the word out their mouth. Well done. They just could not say it.
but thank God they never, because it makes you a certain style. So, yeah. Great to talk to you.
Amazing. Thanks, Steve.
Cheers.
Up
Cheers.
the Spurs.
Up the Spurs.
Up the Spurs.
Go
Tim,
on,
hope I'll
Spurs.
meet you again soon, and you two chaps, of course.
Would be lovely. Would be
Steve,
lovely.
thank you
Cheers.
so much.
Thank you,
Thanks
Steve.
for your time,
Thanks for your
Steve.
time.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Cheers.